I know that there is an ongoing debate about writers writing outside of their own culture, their own experiences. I think it's important that writers do that, but if you do, you got to get it right, and you need to approach it with respect and collaboration.
You know, these are not just the people in power, their stories. It's the guys who had to go out to exterminate the family pets left behind. You know, these are not just the anti-heroes and the heroes. So yeah, Craig, why was it important for you to sort of mix in some of these lesser known human stories?
I think you just said why. Because they are human stories, and I think that's how we process the world. Somebody once famously said, if you should tell somebody that 1 million children are starving, they will sigh and then move on. And if you show them a picture of one starving child, they'll open their wallet. Yeah. Well, that doesn't make any sense, but that is how our minds work. And you, in something like Chernobyl, where there were hundreds of thousands of citizens that were compelled into service to fight this, I felt pretty strongly that you needed to focus on a story out of that. And these are real stories, they're based on first-person accounts. And I found there were these quirks of humanity in those that were just so specific and undeniable. I mean, Johan can talk to how he pulled those little moments out, but because Johan is kind of the two of us, I think, are obsessed with the weird and the strange, but I think mostly I learned it from him. I think he taught me to appreciate this. I mean, you know what I mean, Johan? You know what I'm talking about?
He's not just calling you weird, I hope. Yeah, Johan, can you talk about some of the smaller moments that you wanted to heighten in the show?
Well, I mean, again, you know, great film is about specificity and about uniqueness. I think, you know, Craig and I both share the idea of, you know, if you're making a movie, don't use other films as reference. You know, you find your well somewhere else. You know, and we also love. Both of us love authenticity, but we also love impressionism and poetry, and you know, and I think ultimately with everything you do, even the story of Chernobyl, which is very fact-based and all that, in the end, it's not about what you think, it's about what you feel, and that's the whole, you know, the underlying purpose of everything we're doing. So at all times, you know, you have a catastrophe and you have a lot of you know, schematics and machinations behind that, but it is about the human beings and what they make us feel, you know. So it's that relationship we're after in every instance. And luckily enough, you know, Craig and I had never worked before, and we do come from very different worlds in some sense. But it was actually remarkable to find how much unity we found in various forms of expressions and feelings and thoughts and all of that. So in that aspect, the process was pretty fucking gorgeous, actually.
That's my guy.
I want to talk. I'm getting some questions in about sort of the nuts and bolts of the shoot, so I'd like to talk a little bit about that. And you know, how many days was the shoot, for instance?
Jane, you remember all this.
Jane?
My internet, he keeps saying I'm unstable, which is definitely also true, and so is my internet. It was 5 months or something.
5 months of shooting.
How many days was that?
I think it was
Can you hear me, Wendy?
Yeah, we can hear you.
125 or something, was it?
I think it was 100-ish principal, and then another 25 or 30 second unit. And our second unit was not really.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think it was 100.
Yeah, I think a typical second unit will do a lot of, you know, cleanup work, and our second unit, which was directed by Måns Månsson, another fantastic Swedish director, very much was capturing some things that are, you know, very poetic and essential and beautiful. He was working well with. We had the team of Swedes across this thing. You can't.
Yeah, I didn't know that, because Måns is quite an auteur in his own right. I didn't know he would be doing second unit. Very cool.
Yeah, Johan came to us. He's like, guy's his own. We got a director to be our second year director.
This is something interesting to talk about because, you know, many times second unit directors are chosen for, you know, technical pickup shots and all that. But what ultimately happens is that second unit needs to do with a lot of, you know, visual stuff, to be honest. And I, you know, I know Måns since many years, and he's, you know, a DP and a director, and he has a very good eye. And I know that by experience that you end up giving the second unit a lot of visual stuff, and then they come back with something that is literally not usable. So for me, it was tremendously important to have somebody who could, who would understand and fulfill that need, and he was absolutely perfect at that. And he's a Swede also, which is sort of one of the main rules for.
Wendy, one of the things with the scale of it was that it was as much as anything the shoot was long, but it was about the planning, and we had a really long period of planning, which for something like this, that was the critical difference with many television episodic pieces like this, miniseries, that both HBO and Sky understood that, you know, it was going to be a 9-month prep period effectively. I mean, Johan, you were on for 9 months prep, weren't you, really, effectively, from July to April, which is double, 3 times what you would normally get. And that was because of the scale of it, the fact that it was in Lithuania and Ukraine, the detail needed for the authentic delivery of this, which we had to do, and that took months of research for each of the HODs. So we had the money to do that from Sky and HBO, which was the gift really for us. Otherwise, we could have all really messed it up. So. And
can you, maybe Jane, you can talk, or whoever wants to jump in, about why you shot a lot in Lithuania. I was lucky to meet Linetta, your Lithuanian.
Linetta.
She's
who was
amazing.
just amazing hearing her stories. Also, she was very much paying tribute to the fact that there would be some tiny little detail that someone from the region would notice, like, oh, they wouldn't have had this water glass in the court scene like that. And she said it was so open, you know, you guys were listening to anybody, you know, from the lowly intern.
We were not listening, we were asking for it, you know. I mean, again, if we're looking for authenticity, we don't clump in with some random idea about it. So again, you know, those 9 months of research really paid off, and the fact that we assembled expertise both within the departments that were supposed to be experts, but also from history, because many of the people working on the shoot have lived and breathed the time that we were dealing with. So it was always very handy to say, like, you know, even in the minutest detailed question, like, would you be smoking in this situation? What kind of ashtray would be? All these kind of things, and you'll get an answer that was not in any way contrary. It was just, no, it would be yellow. No, and that's it. Okay, good.
Yeah.
And even
Lithuania was because we recce'd Lithuania and Hungary, both places with architecture, Soviet architecture, and an infrastructure, filming infrastructure there, and a tax break. That was important too. And then, of course, we came across Ignalina, which is the sister plant to Chernobyl, and that sold us on Lithuania quite seriously. And even though it took about a year to get permission to film there, and we didn't even know, once we'd committed to Lithuania, whether we would be allowed to shoot there. And that was the test. I mean, Johan, you must have gone there about 20 times, I think, and Craig and everyone, you know, to try and persuade the authorities that it was safe to let a film crew into a
some very interesting dinners with decision makers and some very, very intriguing, you know, meetings that we had to do in order to get the permission to film there.
Yeah. And while we were shooting there, we were, you know, restricted in a number of ways. I mean, they are still decommissioning that plant. And there is a certain aspect of it that is controlled by either the EU or NATO. I mean, there's like an international aspect. I mean, the guards have fully automatic machine gun weapons, or, you know, whatever you call those things. But we were always the beneficiary of that collective knowledge of our crew. It was a gift. I mean, I tried as best as I could before I got there to get things right, but there are always things you're going to get wrong, simple things you wouldn't even imagine, and they were right on it, you know. Dyatlov does not bring his lunch to work in a paper bag, he brings his lunch to work in a briefcase. That's the way a guy came up to, that's the way my father did it. Another guy came up to, that's the way my father did it. Okay, that's the way we're doing it. But even prior to that, every time I finished a script, I would send it to a woman who had grown up in Ukraine, outside of Kiev, not far from Pripyat and Chernobyl, and who was there in 1986. And she read through everything and as a kind of cultural corrector, you know, to say like, okay, that's correct. That's actually not right. It would be like this. And we took all of that very, very seriously. I know that there is an ongoing debate about writers writing outside of their own culture, their own experiences. I think it's important that writers do that, but if you do, you got to get it right, and you need to approach it with respect and collaboration. So it was, I think, one of the most important aspects of us getting the show right and the look right was that we were doing it there with the people who lived in it. We were confident, therefore, when we aired the show, that what we weren't going to get was just an avalanche of people from Eastern Europe saying, oh yeah, no, another dumb, fake, you know, impression of who we were by a bunch of Brits and Americans.